The day before my brother's wedding, I said something so ordinary, so harmless, but it changed everything. I smiled at my aunt over dinner and said, "I can't wait for the ceremony tomorrow." She froze. Her fork slipped slightly, clinking against her plate. And then she said it, the sentence that shattered everything I thought I knew. "Oh, sweetheart, the wedding already happened." Just like that. No warning, no emotion, just truth, dropped like a bomb across a dinner table. The air went still. The chatter faded. And all I could hear was the faint sound of my own heartbeat. I laughed. A nervous, shaky laugh. "You mean the rehearsal dinner, right?" I asked. But she just looked at me with that uncomfortable, sympathetic half-smile people wear when they realize you're the only one who doesn't know the secret. "No, Allison," she said quietly. "They got married last weekend." Last weekend. It felt like my mind cracked open. I blinked, searching her face for a hint of misunderstanding. Maybe she mixed up the dates. Maybe she was confused, but no. The way her eyes darted away told me everything. She wasn't confused. I was. That night, I barely said another word. Everyone around me, cousins, aunts, family friends, kept laughing, talking, eating like nothing had happened. And I sat there, gripping my napkin under the table, feeling the sting of humiliation spread across my skin. My brother, my parents, all of them knew. They'd planned a wedding, held a ceremony, celebrated, and never told me. The only reason I found out was because my aunt didn't realize I'd been kept out of it. When I finally excused myself and went outside, the night air hit me like a slap. Cool, sharp, real. The lights from the house glowed behind me as I stood on the porch, my phone in my hand. I opened our family group chat, the one where my mother always sent her daily updates about family progress and gratitude for everyone's help. The last message from her was 2 days ago. "The new kitchen cabinets are in. Thank you, Allison. You've made our home beautiful again, our home, the one I had been paying to renovate." And suddenly, I realized something gutting. While I was wiring thousands of dollars to help them build that house, they were building a life without me in it. I didn't cry that night. Not yet. Shock has a way of numbing you before it breaks you. I just stood there, staring out at the dark sky, trying to piece together all the little red flags I'd ignored over the years. The missed calls. The vague, "we'll tell you later" texts. The way my mother always said, "You're so busy, sweetheart. We don't want to bother you with family stuff." And the strange silence from my brother lately, the man who used to call me his best friend. When I finally got into my car, I just sat there with my hands on the steering wheel, the world spinning around me. "They got married without me." I whispered it once, then again. Each repetition felt heavier, more real. And then, something inside me broke, quietly, like a thread snapping. I started the car, but I didn't drive home. I drove aimlessly through the empty streets, my mind replaying every memory of my brother. The two of us in the backyard, covered in mud after playing in the rain. The night he called me crying after his first breakup. The endless talks where I told him, "You'll always have me." Apparently, I was wrong. By the time I reached my apartment, it was almost midnight. The silence was unbearable. My phone buzzed with a message from Mom. "Did you make it home safely?" No mention of what my aunt said, no acknowledgement. Just small talk. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed back, "I did. Aunt Mary told me about the wedding," and then I waited. 1 minute, 2, 5. Finally, the typing dots appeared. "Oh, honey, it wasn't intentional. It was a small ceremony. We didn't want to stress you out." Stress me out, that's what they called it. Not betrayal, not exclusion, just stress management. I put my phone down and walked to the kitchen. The same kitchen that still smelled faintly of the paint I'd used on my last weekend off, because Mom said she loved the color I'd chosen. The same one she'd thanked me for funding. I laughed softly, a bitter, hollow laugh. Because somehow, in their story, I was always the helper, the supporter. the one who kept things running but never got invited to enjoy them. And as I stood there, staring at the dim reflection of myself in the kitchen window, I realized something terrifying. This wasn't the first time they'd erased me. It was just the first time I'd noticed. The memories came rushing back. Birthday dinners where my brother got the biggest piece of cake because he's younger. Christmas gifts that always felt like an afterthought. Conversations where my opinions were met with polite nods, but his were praised. I used to think it was harmless. That's just how families worked. Someone always gets a little less attention, right? But that night, I finally saw it for what it was. A pattern of quiet cruelty. And that's when the promise formed in my mind. Quiet, cold, steady. I won't let them take another piece of me. Because love that comes with conditions isn't love, it's control. And if I couldn't be part of their celebration, I could at least reclaim my own dignity. Still, before I acted, I needed to understand. So the next morning, I decided to call my aunt, the woman who unknowingly broke the truth to me. "Hey, Aunt Mary," I said, my voice steady but shaking inside. "About last night. You said the wedding already happened?" She hesitated. I could hear the guilt in her breath. "Oh, Allison, I thought you knew. Your mom said you couldn't make it." I went silent. I couldn't make it? I was never even told it was happening. "Aunt Mary," I said slowly, "when was it?" "Last Saturday. Just a small backyard thing. Everyone was there. Your parents, your cousins, your brother's friends." My stomach turned. Everyone except me. "And? My mom said I couldn't come?" "She said you were traveling for work, dear." "That you were the one who said you didn't want to deal with family drama. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. That lie, so clean, so believable, it erased me completely. I thanked her quietly and hung up. Then, I sat there, phone still in my hand, realizing something even worse. They hadn't just excluded me. They'd rewritten me. That morning, I walked into my home office, opened my laptop, and stared at my banking app. Every month, I'd been transferring money to my parents for their house renovation, the family home. I believed we were all rebuilding together. I scrolled through the payments, thousands of dollars. My name was everywhere, but suddenly, the home didn't feel like ours anymore. It felt like theirs. That's when the thought crept in. Why am I financing people who can't even tell me I'm not invited? It wasn't about the money. It was about respect. And I realized they'd been taking both for years. That night, I wrote my first letter. Not an email, not a text. A handwritten letter to my parents. Calm, clear, devastatingly polite. "I know about the wedding. I'm not angry. I'm just done pretending this family sees me as one of its own. The renovation payments will stop, effective immediately. I wish you the best I didn't send it yet. But I kept it there, on my desk, a symbol of the promise I'd made to myself. Because in that single moment, when my aunt's innocent words ripped open years of buried truth, something inside me finally woke up. I wasn't just excluded from a wedding. I'd been excluded from my own family's story for years. And for the first time in my life, I was ready to write a new one. One where I wasn't the helper, the invisible daughter, the background character. This time, I'd be the one in control. They thought leaving me out would break me. Instead, it made me see them clearly for the first time. When I was younger, people used to say my brother and I were inseparable. We shared everything, snacks, secrets, dreams. But if you looked a little closer, even back then, you'd notice something off. He shared the spotlight. I shared the silence. It started small. The kind of imbalance families dismiss as normal. He'd forget to do his chores, and I'd quietly do them for him because Mom looked tired. He'd get into trouble at school, and Dad would sigh, "Boys will be boys. Allison, be a good sister and help him study." And when I achieved something, a scholarship, an art award, anything, the praise always came with a twist. "That's wonderful, Allison, but don't brag. Your brother's been feeling down lately." Every compliment was a warning. Don't shine too bright. I grew up thinking love was earned through silence. The quieter I was, The easier things stayed. And when you live like that long enough, you start confusing peace with invisibility. By the time I was 15, my parents had already perfected the art of selective affection. They weren't cruel, they were careful. Careful with what they said, careful with how they excluded, careful enough to make me question my own reality every time something felt wrong. My brother, Liam, was their golden boy. He had that charm, the kind that wrapped people around his finger. He'd mess up, smile, and somehow make everyone else feel guilty for noticing. One afternoon, I remember walking into the living room to find my parents whispering. Dad's voice was low, sharp. She shouldn't find out, at least not yet. Mom nodded. When they noticed me, they froze. Find out what? I asked. Mom smiled too quickly. Oh, honey, nothing serious. We were just talking about a surprise for your brother I didn't press. I was used to being left out of the surprises. But that night, I overheard them on the phone, talking about paying off one of Liam's mistakes, an expensive one involving his car and someone else's mailbox. The next day, Dad asked me for my allowance money back, the one he'd promised to help me save for college books. He said things were tight this month. I didn't ask where it went. I already knew. Years passed. I went to college, got a job, and moved out. And from the outside, it looked like I'd finally escaped the dynamic that had quietly defined my life. But you can't run from a pattern that's stitched into your family's DNA. Every phone call with Mom started the same. How's work, sweetheart? Oh, by the way, your brother's struggling a bit right now. And every time, it ended with me wiring money for rent, for repairs, for emergencies. It wasn't just guilt, it was conditioning. When you spend years being told that helping is how you prove love, you start thinking generosity is your only worth. I remember one Christmas when things shifted again. I had planned a big surprise. I'd saved up enough to take the whole family on a trip. I wanted to see them smile, to feel like I belonged again. But the night before I announced it, Mom called me crying. Not tears of joy, tears of panic. Your brother's in trouble again, Allison. He lost his job, and the bank's threatening to take his car. I didn't even hesitate. I sent her the money, every dollar of that vacation fund. A week later, I found out he hadn't lost his job at all. He'd quit because he didn't like the environment. When I confronted him, he laughed. Relax, sis. You make enough. You're the responsible one, responsible. That word used to sound like a compliment. Now it felt like a trap. Years later, when I finally started earning real money, my parents' tone changed again. They began calling me their blessing, their rock, the daughter, who kept the family together. I didn't realize then that those words were code for financial lifeline. When Dad got sick, I paid for the hospital bills. When Mom wanted to redo the kitchen, I offered to help. And when they said the house felt too old, I became the investor in a home I didn't even live in. Sometimes, late at night, I'd sit with my coffee and wonder if I was doing the right thing. If maybe one day they'd see me, not just as a source of help, but as a person worth including. I used to imagine them sitting around the dinner table saying, Allison really saved us. We're proud of her, but deep down, I knew they wouldn't. Because gratitude wasn't part of our family language, only expectation. The first real crack appeared 2 years before the wedding lie. Mom called me one afternoon, voice trembling. Your brother's having a tough time with his engagement, she said. He might need your help. I smiled faintly. Of course. What does he need? Well, the down payment on the venue fell through. I hesitated. Mom, I thought they weren't even sure about the date yet. They'll sort it out, sweetheart. They just need stability right now, stability. That was another code word for money. I wanted to say no, I really did. But then she said the one sentence that always disarmed me. You've always been the strong one, Allison. And just like that, I wired the money. Later that week, I called Liam. I didn't mention the payment. I just asked how he was. Hey, bro, I said lightly. Mom told me you're stressed about the wedding. There was a pause. Then he chuckled. What wedding? I blinked. You and Natalie, right? She said. He cut me off, his tone suddenly sharp. Mom talks too much. It's not even official yet. And then, like always, he changed the subject. Looking back now, I realize that was the first lie. The first thread in a web that would later trap me completely. Because from that day on, conversations about his wedding became vague and confusing. Dates kept changing. Excuses piled up. And every time I asked direct questions, Mom would sigh and say, "You worry too much, sweetheart. Focus on work. We'll handle it." Handle what? Apparently, handling meant rewriting me out of the picture. The following year, I visited home for Thanksgiving. The house looked different, newer, brighter, almost unfamiliar. Fresh paint, new flooring, shiny kitchen counters, all funded by me. As I walked in, I noticed something strange on the mantelpiece, a framed engagement photo of Liam and Natalie. It wasn't the picture that hurt. It was the realization that it was the first time I'd seen it. When did this happen? I asked, trying to sound casual. Mom smiled, almost nervously. Oh, that? A few months ago. It was such a small thing. We didn't think you'd want to fly down just for photos. My chest tightened. I lived 2 hours away. Still, I nodded. Right. Small thing, but that night, while everyone was asleep, I scrolled through Facebook. There it was. An entire engagement party. Cousins, neighbors, family friends. Everyone except me. The comments stung. Beautiful family gathering. So happy for you all. Allison must be so proud. They didn't even realize I wasn't there. Because in my family, my absence had become so normal, it was invisible. I stopped scrolling and stared at the screen until my vision blurred. That was the first time I cried for real. Not because I'd missed a party, but because it hit me how easily they'd learned to celebrate without me. After that night, I pulled away. Slowly, quietly, the way people do when they're testing if distance will make anyone notice. It didn't. The calls got shorter, the texts fewer, until communication became purely transactional. Hey, Allison, can you send the next payment for the bathroom tiles? No, how are you? No, we miss you. Just invoices disguised as conversations. And still, I sent the money. Because hope is stubborn, until that dinner. Until that one careless sentence from my aunt tore the last layer of illusion away. They got married last weekend. That was the day the past came crashing into the present, forcing me to see every sign I'd ignored, every quiet betrayal I'd explained away as family. When people talk about revenge, they picture anger. Dramatic, explosive, violent. But mine didn't start that way. It started with stillness, with the kind of silence that comes when you've been too loud for too long in a room that never listened. I realized my entire life had been built around one goal: to earn love that was never meant to be given. But this time, I wasn't going to beg for space at their table. I was going to build my own. And the first brick would be truth. They taught me that love had conditions. Now I'll teach them what distance feels like. That thought carried me into the next stage, the confrontation I'd avoided all my life. Because when the people who raised you become strangers, you can either keep pretending or finally face them. And I was done pretending. The night after my aunt's revelation, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw flashes. My brother's smug grin, my mother's calm indifference, my father's silence. They'd built an entire event, a wedding, and erased me from it. But what haunted me most wasn't the exclusion. It was how easily they'd done it. Like I'd been a placeholder in their story, easily deleted when the scene didn't need me. By morning, my coffee tasted bitter, even with extra sugar. I sat at my kitchen table, phone in hand, scrolling through pictures I was never meant to see. Liam in a sleek black tuxedo. Mom and Dad smiling, champagne glasses raised. The caption read, "A perfect day surrounded by love." Love. The word sliced through me like a blade. For a while, I just stared at the screen, numb. Then something inside me cracked. Not loudly, but cleanly, like a glass finally giving way under pressure. I dialed my mother's number. She picked up on the second ring, her voice bright, rehearsed. Sweetheart, I was just thinking about you. I didn't answer right away. My throat felt dry. Mom, I said finally, voice steady. When were you planning to tell me about Liam's wedding? Silence. A pause long enough to make me feel the distance between us in miles and meaning. Then her tone shifted. Softer, guilty, but still trying to control the narrative. Oh, honey, it all happened so fast. We didn't want to bother you with last-minute plans. Bother me? I repeated, my voice breaking. I'm your daughter. You didn't think I'd want to be there? Of course we wanted you there, she lied, her voice trembling. It's just, you're always so busy. You work so hard, busy. That was their favorite excuse. It made them sound considerate, while painting me as absent. Mom, I said, my voice sharpening. I sent money for that renovation, for your happiness. And while I was working double shifts, you were throwing a wedding I wasn't invited to? There was another pause. Then, quietly, it wasn't my decision, Allison. Your brother thought it might be awkward. Awkward for who? For everyone, she whispered. You two haven't been close lately. That line hit harder than I expected. She said it like I was the problem, the reason for my own exclusion. Mom, I said slowly, do you even hear yourself? You're telling me you watched your son get married and thought your daughter didn't deserve to know? Her voice cracked. You're making this bigger than it is. I laughed, a hollow, broken sound. You hid a wedding, Mom. What's bigger than that? She went silent. I could hear her breathing, uneven, defensive. We just didn't want drama, she said finally. And there it was. The truth. They didn't want honesty. They wanted convenience. You didn't want drama, I repeated quietly, so you created a betrayal. After that, she tried to steer the conversation back into calm territory. Small talk, guilt, manipulation disguised as peacekeeping. But something inside me had shifted. Mom, I need you to know something, I said. You've treated me like a backup plan my whole life. Like the person you call when things go wrong. But not when things go right. That's not fair. No, I interrupted. What's not fair is pretending I'm family only when you need me. There was a sharp inhale on her end. I could tell she wasn't used to me talking like that. Years of quiet compliance had made her forget I could raise my voice. I think I need space, I continued. I'm pausing all renovation payments. Indefinitely. Allison, please. Don't. Not this time. And I hung up. The silence after the call was deafening. But for the first time in years, it wasn't empty. It was peaceful. I stared out the window, watching the city move, people rushing to places where they belonged. And I realized I'd spent my whole life chasing belonging in a house that never wanted me home. An hour later, my brother called. His name lit up the screen, Liam. I considered ignoring it, but curiosity won. I wanted to hear what betrayal sounded like in his voice. Hey, sis, he said, his tone casual, almost mocking. Heard Mom talk to you. You mean lied to me? I said coldly. Come on, he chuckled. Don't make this a big deal. It was a small ceremony, nothing fancy. Oh, right, I said, my voice sharp. Just a small event where you vowed your life to someone and forgot your only sister existed. We didn't forget, he said smoothly. It just didn't make sense to invite you. You and Natalie never really clicked, I froze. What does she have to do with it? He hesitated, then sighed dramatically. You've always been intense, Allison. People don't get you sometimes, people, or just you. You take things personally. You hold grudges. Natalie didn't want tension on her wedding day, and honestly, I agreed. I felt my pulse in my ears. He sounded calm, rational, like the betrayal was logical, even kind. That's how manipulators sound when they think they're winning. So, I said, my voice steady, you lied to me for months. Took my money for the renovations that helped pay for your event. And you're saying it was all for peace? He scoffed. You act like we stole from you. You offered to help offered? I said, voice cracking. I offered because I trusted you. Because I thought family meant something. Family's complicated, he said dismissively. You wouldn't understand. And that's when something inside me snapped completely. Not from anger, but from clarity. You're right, I said softly. I don't understand how you can smile at someone while erasing them. He didn't respond. You know what, Liam? I continued. You can keep the house, the renovation, all of it. But I'm done financing your lies. Then I ended the call. That night, I turned off my phone. No messages, no apologies, just silence. But silence can be healing when it comes from strength, not submission. I sat down and began to write. Not a message, not a letter, a list. A list of every time I'd said yes when I wanted to say no. Every dollar I'd sent. Every boundary I'd let them cross. When I finished, I realized something profound. I had been my family's silent investor in their happiness while bankrupting myself emotionally. Days passed. Then weeks. No one called. Until one afternoon, Mom texted, "We need to talk." It's about the house. I didn't reply. Then she called. 5 times. Finally, I answered. "Mom, what do you want?" Her voice trembled. The contractors stopped working. They said the payments aren't coming through. They're not, I said. I paused them. Allison, please. We'll lose everything. Everything? I asked. You mean the house I paid for? The one where you hosted a wedding without me? She began to cry. Real or rehearsed, I couldn't tell anymore. We didn't mean to hurt you, she whispered. Your family. No, I said quietly. I was your safety net. There's a difference. She begged, pleaded, shifted blame. All the usual choreography of manipulation. But this time, I didn't dance. Mom, I said finally, I'll pay for one last thing, a mirror. Because it's time you looked at yourselves. Then I hung up again. In the weeks that followed, the silence turned from peaceful to powerful. It wasn't absence anymore. It was presence. My absence became their consequence. And for the first time, I didn't feel guilty. I felt free. They taught me that love meant sacrifice, that loyalty meant obedience. But I learned something far more important. Love without respect is manipulation. And silence, when chosen, can be the loudest revenge of all. If you've ever been made to feel invisible by the people who were supposed to love you, you're not alone. Share your story below, because maybe your voice will help someone else find theirs. And if stories like this speak to your heart, make sure you're subscribed. There's power in truth, and we share it here. But the story doesn't end there. Because sometimes, when you finally draw your boundary, the people who used to control you don't accept the silence. They fight back. And my family wasn't done yet. The real test came when they tried to turn the tables on me. That's when I discovered just how far betrayal can go, and how much strength it takes to win it back. The next morning, I woke up with that strange feeling you get when something's off, but you can't tell what it is. My phone buzzed with a few family messages. Pictures, dozens of them. My brother, smiling. My parents, crying tears of joy. My aunt, holding a bouquet. My brother had gotten married, and I wasn't invited. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I thought maybe it was some old photo, some misunderstanding. But the timestamp said it all. Yesterday. The day before I'd spoken to my aunt. They had all been there. Everyone except me. The one who'd paid for their home renovation. The one who had worked 2 jobs to help my parents keep their house. My stomach turned. My chest tightened. It wasn't just a wedding. It was an announcement that I didn't belong. That no matter what I did, I'd never be part of the family in their eyes. I called my mom. She didn't pick up. I texted my dad. What's going on? He left me on red. Hours passed. Then my aunt replied with a voice note. Cheerful, like she hadn't just broken my world apart. Oh, honey, she said. They didn't want to burden you. You've been so busy. It was a small family thing. Small family thing? I was family. That night, I stared at those photos until my eyes burned. Every smile felt like a knife. Every congratulations comment under those posts was another reminder that I'd been erased. And then it hit me. They hadn't forgotten me. They had chosen to exclude me. That realization changed everything. If you've ever been betrayed by the very people you love most, you know this pain. The kind that doesn't just hurt your heart, it rewires it. And for me, this was the breaking point. Soft transition, music shift to suspense tone. I wasn't going to let them pretend I didn't exist anymore. I decided to make sure they would remember me, and what I had done for them. The next morning, I didn't even bother dressing up. My hands were shaking as I grabbed my car keys, but my mind was crystal clear. I was going to see them. When I pulled up to my parents' house, I could still see the wedding decorations on the porch. Ribbons, flowers, and a just married sign that made my blood boil. I knocked once, then twice. No answer. So I opened the door and stepped inside. There they were, my mom and dad, sitting at the kitchen table like nothing had happened. My brother wasn't there. He was probably off on his honeymoon, but his laughter still echoed through the photos on the wall. Why didn't anyone tell me? I asked. My voice cracked, but I stood tall. My mom looked startled at first, then sighed. Allison, it wasn't personal. We just didn't think you'd have the time, I laughed bitterly. Didn't have the time? You didn't think I'd have time to attend my own brother's wedding? My dad spoke up, his tone calm, almost rehearsed. You've always been busy with work, and we didn't want to bother you with all the planning. Bother me? I snapped. I paid for your renovation. I've been the one sending money every month so you could keep that roof over your heads. The silence that followed was deafening. My mom looked away. My dad's expression hardened. You don't have to throw that in our faces, Allison. We didn't ask you to pay for anything. That sentence cut deeper than anything I'd ever heard. Because it was true. They never asked. I offered. Out of love. Out of duty. Out of hope that maybe one day they'd finally see me. But in that moment, I realized something. They'd never seen me as family. Just as a wallet. My mother stood up, tears in her eyes. Don't ruin this with your bitterness, Allison. Your brother deserves to be happy, I stared at her, my voice cold now. You're right. He deserves happiness. But so do I. And I'm done buying my place in this family. Short pause, sound of footsteps as Allison leaves. As I walked out, I could still hear my father muttering something about me being dramatic. But I didn't look back. Not this time. Driving away, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just felt free for the first time in years. But deep down, I knew. This wasn't over. They'd taken advantage of me for too long, and I wasn't going to let them walk away from it that easily. What I did next would make them remember exactly who they had pushed away. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every word, every lie, every moment I had been used. It all replayed in my mind like a movie I couldn't turn off. For years, I had supported them financially, covering bills, fixing leaks, paying for their renovations, thinking I was doing it out of love. But love shouldn't feel like debt, and family shouldn't make you feel disposable. By sunrise, I made a decision. If they could plan an entire wedding without me, I could plan something of my own, something that would make them realize what they had lost. So, I logged into my bank account and stared at the transaction list. All the payments I had sent for their home renovation project. Thousands of dollars. Each one like a little piece of myself I'd given away, unappreciated. I called the contractor. Hi, this is Allison. I'm the one who's been covering the renovation costs for my parents' home. He recognized me instantly. I'd been their point of contact for months. Yes, Allison. We were just about to start the next phase of work. Well, I said, keeping my voice steady. Not anymore. I won't be continuing the payments. Please halt the work effective immediately. There was a pause. Are you sure? Your parents mentioned. I'm sure, I interrupted. They can handle it themselves now. When I hung up, a strange calm washed over me. For the first time, I wasn't acting out of guilt. I was taking back control. Later that afternoon, I sent a short message to my parents. I've stopped all renovation payments. You'll need to take care of the remaining balance yourselves. Consider this my final contribution. Within minutes, my phone buzzed. Mom. What do you mean? We can't afford that. Dad. Allison, this is ridiculous. You can't just back out. Now I didn't respond. I didn't owe them an explanation anymore. But what I did next, that was the real turning point. I decided to tell my story, not to shame them, but to finally free myself. So I opened my laptop and began writing. Every memory, every time I'd been overlooked, every instance of favoritism, every dollar spent without gratitude. It wasn't a rant, it was a confession, a healing. And for the first time in my life, I didn't care if they read it or not. I posted it anonymously to a family drama forum where thousands of people shared similar experiences. Within hours, comments flooded in. You're not alone. I felt this same pain. Cutting ties doesn't make you cold. It makes you brave. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel invisible. But little did I know, my post would soon go viral. And that's when my family finally decided to notice me, not out of love, but out of fear. 2 days later, my phone began to buzz nonstop. At first, I thought it was work emails. But when I glanced at the screen, it was dozens of missed calls from my mother, a few from my brother, and even one from my father. Then, a text popped up from an unknown number. So this is what you've been doing? Telling strangers about your family? You've embarrassed us, Allison. I froze. My story had gone viral. Over 1.5 million views in less than 48 hours. Thousands of comments from people who had lived through the same emotional abuse. Siblings who were ignored. Parents who played favorites. Families torn apart by greed and silence. But my family? They didn't care about the truth. Only that the world finally saw their lies. Later that night, I received a message from my brother. You had no right to post that, Allison. You made us look like monsters, I replied calmly. You didn't need my words to look like monsters. You managed that just fine without me. A few minutes later, he responded with something that almost made me laugh. You're jealous. You've always been jealous. That word, jealous, burned deeper than any insult. It was their favorite excuse, the shield they always used to dismiss my pain. So I typed back slowly, carefully. No, I'm not jealous. I'm just done. And I blocked his number. Then came the call from my aunt, the same one who had accidentally told me about the wedding. Sweetheart, she whispered, your parents are furious. But I just want you to know, I read your story, and I'm proud of you. Her voice cracked when she said that. For a moment, I felt seen, really seen, by someone in my family. Still, the backlash didn't stop there. My parents tried everything. Guilt-tripping, gaslighting, even sending long emotional messages about, how could you betray us like this? But the truth? It was too late. For once, I wasn't their puppet. I wasn't their fixer. I was me. And the more people connected with my story, the more I realized how powerful honesty could be. Then something unexpected happened. A journalist reached out to me through the forum, saying they wanted to feature my story, not to expose my family's name, but to raise awareness about emotional neglect and favoritism within families. At first, I hesitated. But then, I thought about every person who had commented, every stranger who said, I thought I was the only one. So I said yes. And that's when my story, our story, stopped being a secret and became a movement. My family might have silenced me for years, but this time, my voice was louder than their shame. The morning the article went live, I woke up to a flood of notifications, messages from people all over the world, women, men, even teenagers, telling me how my story helped them find the courage to finally stand up for themselves. I sat on my bed, reading each one, tears streaming down my face. For so long, I'd believed my pain didn't matter. But now, my words were healing others. I wasn't invisible anymore. I was heard. That same day, my parents showed up at my apartment. I didn't invite them in. Mom stood on the doorstep, holding a folded newspaper, the article about me. Her eyes looked tired, almost broken. "Allison," she said softly, "you've humiliated us." "Everyone in the neighborhood is talking." I took a deep breath, feeling the familiar sting of guilt creeping in. And then I let it go. "I didn't humiliate you," I said quietly. "You did that yourselves, every time you chose silence over love." Dad clenched his jaw. "We were only doing what we thought was best for you." "Best for me?" I repeated. "Or easiest for you?" They didn't answer. For the first time, they had no excuses left. After a long pause, Mom's voice cracked. "So what now?" "You're cutting us off?" I looked her straight in the eye. "No, I'm setting boundaries. There's a difference." They stood there, waiting for me to change my mind. But I didn't. Finally, Dad muttered something under his breath and turned away. Mom followed, shoulders heavy, her silence louder than any apology. When the door closed, I felt an overwhelming wave of peace. Not joy, not revenge, just peace. I walked over to the window, watching them leave, and whispered to myself, sometimes the only way to heal is to stop expecting closure from the people who hurt you. That night, I wrote one final post on the same forum. Forgiveness doesn't always mean reconnection. Sometimes it means accepting what will never change and moving on anyway. Within hours, the post exploded with support. Thousands of people resonated with it. And as I read their words, I realized something powerful. This wasn't just my story anymore. It was everyone's story who had ever been forgotten, used, or silenced by the people they loved most. I smiled through my tears, closed my laptop, and whispered a promise to myself. Never again will I let anyone make me feel small in my own story. Months later, I started a small podcast, helping others share their stories anonymously. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about freedom and giving others the voice I once thought I'd lost. And that's how it all came full circle. The same family that silenced me ended up inspiring a movement of truth-tellers. Because the truth? Silence protects the abuser, but storytelling heals the survivor. A year has passed since that day. The day I finally stopped being the family scapegoat and became the author of my own piece. So much has changed. The house I once called home, the one I helped renovate, still stands, but I haven't been back. Not once. And that's okay, because some doors aren't meant to be reopened. My brother and I, we haven't spoken since the wedding. I heard from a mutual friend that his marriage is already falling apart. Maybe karma works in quiet ways, not with explosions, but with lessons. As for my parents, we have polite distance now. A few short messages during holidays, nothing more. No arguments, no manipulation, just space. And that's the most peaceful sound I've ever known. Soft acoustic music begins, calm and emotional. When I look back, I realize revenge isn't about hurting others. It's about reclaiming yourself, your power, your worth, your story. It's standing in front of the mirror and saying, I may have been mistreated, but I am not broken. That's what true revenge looks like. It's healing in silence, not screaming in pain. It's moving forward when they expect you to fall. So if you're watching this and you've ever felt invisible, if you've ever been the one left out, ignored, or made to feel less than, please hear me. You are not invisible. You are becoming. Don't waste your energy trying to make people see your worth. Just walk away and build a life so bright they can't help but notice the glow from afar. Music intensifies slightly, hopeful crescendo. And one more thing, if you've ever lived through something like this, share your story in the comments below. Your words could be the reason someone else finds the strength to heal. Trust me, the act of speaking your truth can save lives. Pause. Tone softens, emotional close. Before you go, If this story resonated with you, make sure to subscribe. Because here, we don't just tell stories, we reclaim voices that were once silenced. Every week, we bring you real tales of betrayal, courage, and redemption, stories that remind you, no matter how dark your past, you still control how your story ends. Music fades out gently, leaving the sound of wind or calm ambience. I'm Allison, and this was the day I took my power back.